We all develop patterns in the ways that we interpret and respond to life events, patterns of thinking, patterns of feeling, and patterns of behavior. When someone's patterns of living work well, I don't hear about them as a problem. What people present to me as a clinical psychologist are the situations that their existing patterns don't lead them to handle very well. I end up hearing about those times when a person attempts to handle a situation or manage some part of himself or herself, and the person doesn't get the result that he or she wants, which then causes the person pain, despair, and even depression. So it is a basic point of my book, and it is the culmination of everything that I've learned over the last 20-odd years, that people learn to do things a certain way, whether it's form a relationship or make a business decision, and then they do what they know how to do. For as long as it works, I don't really hear much from the person. But when it doesn't work, what happens then? People who aren't depressed will observe that what they've been doing isn't working very well, and then they'll strive to do something else. If they're not sure what to do, they may ask for guidance from someone who is more experienced or knowledgeable. In contrast, it's often the case that people who are prone to depression do what they know how to do, and if it doesn't work, they personalize it. It's as if they say to themselves, "I can't do this, I'm no good." And it doesn't seem to occur to them that it isn't them that is ineffective or incompetent. Rather, it's the strategy they use. When I use the term strategy, I mean the series of steps that you follow in order to achieve a particular result. You have a strategy, whether you realize it consciously or not, for everything you do, including how you choose what clothes you are going to wear today, how you decide what you are going to eat for lunch when choosing from a menu, how you decide which car you are going to buy, and even how you decide who you are going to date or marry. For people who are effective, their strategies are efficient for doing what they are trying to do. The implication, of course, is that when you try something and it does not work, that doesn't mean that you are a failure or you're a loser. It means that what you tried didn't work. The old maxim, "if at first you don't succeed, try again," is a popular one and a well-intentioned one, but I would change it by adding, "and when you try again, do something different." Well, doing something different requires flexibility. It requires adaptability, meaning the ability to deliberately change your response to a familiar situation. For many people, it's so uncomfortable doing something new or doing something different, they just do what's comfortable even though it can't work. Others simply don't know what else to do, and so they give up and continually fail. It's very important that you learn the skill of setting aside your quite normal feelings of uncertainty or doubt or fear of trying something new in order to do something different that stands a better chance of obtaining the success that you're striving for. This next hypnosis session is about helping you to do that. The purpose of this session is to encourage you to be more flexible, to be more adaptable, to be willing to experiment. I'm choosing my words very carefully here. To be willing to experiment with new behaviors, new responses, and new perceptions. When will things change? When you do. When you do something different, you will inevitably get different results. New and different things will happen. Be willing to step outside your comfort zone, to do things differently in situations you know you can handle better. Learn from others who seem to do better, and use your ability to be observant to notice more of what works. That is such an important point. So I would encourage you now to get focused on the idea of doing something different. Find yourself a place to sit quietly and comfortably. so you can listen attentively to this tape. Arrange yourself in a position that is comfortable for you and let your eyes close. Then you can begin by taking in a few deep, relaxing breaths and just orient yourself now to the idea, just to the idea of having some quiet time, some focused relaxation time, where you can be with yourself in a way that is accepting, nurturing, and let your body experience the comfort of having the freedom to just be. Because as you're learning from listening to this tape and the others, here you have the opportunity to experience yourself differently. And when I say experience yourself differently, I mean you can set aside your usual way of thinking, your usual way of feeling. Set aside your usual way of looking at things long enough to discover some very important things about yourself. The first thing that I would want you to start to become aware of is that the way that you think about things is different than the way things really are. That's true for you. It's true for me. It's true for anyone. After all, no one has cornered the market on truth about themselves or about their lives. Each of us grows up in a particular home, a particular family, a particular community, a particular culture. And we learn from all of them our views about everything: relationships, religion, education, politics, art, science, the world. And little by little, what you start to discover, if you live long enough and you think about it hard enough, is that there are so many ways of going through life. There are people who live happy, successful lives, being married. And there are people who live wonderful lives, being single. There are people who find happiness in their accomplishments. And there are people who find contentment in just being who they are, without any particular accomplishments. As a part of my professional life, I do a great deal of traveling. Now, I don't know whether you've done much traveling in your life or not. But even if you've never actually visited other cultures in person, you've certainly heard about them, read about them, perhaps seen them in movies or on television. Other cultures that range from very primitive by our standards to very advanced cultures. And as someone who travels a great deal, I'm always very aware that when I step into another culture, that these people have a common history, They have an identity. They have their own language. They know their land. They know their people. They know their customs far better than I, as an outsider, ever will. Now, when I travel into another culture, can I really use my American background to judge them? Is English a better language than theirs? Or are they equally capable of expressing ideas and sharing information? Are American values really better than theirs? Or are they equally capable of having strong family ties, encouraging loving relationships, and developing important life skills? And the people of that foreign culture may do things very differently, and yet still be sophisticated in their own ways, worthy of my great respect and even my admiration. But if I go into a culture that is not my own, and I don't have the ability to adjust my language to those people there who don't speak English as their native tongue, and if I don't adjust my customs or my manners out of respect for their way of life, then what am I doing? I'm only doing the same thing I've always done, because that's what I learned and it's what I know how to do. It's what I'm most comfortable with. And yet, clearly, it makes no sense to act as if the whole world is America. I must learn how to fit into this foreign culture that I am visiting. And so for me to be a respectful traveler, I could try and learn to speak a little bit of their language. I can observe and respect their customs. I could acknowledge that their ways are good for them, even if I prefer a different way when I'm at home. And it means stretching myself to adapt to a culture that is not my own in order to communicate respect and to create harmony, and in order for me to learn and relearn that there are more ways to go through life that are just fine than my way. And so when you're sitting quietly the way that you are now, you can certainly absorb the much deeper message about traveling, doing things differently, and adapting yourself to changing situations. Because the reality is, every person you meet is a foreigner with his or her own language, his or her own customs. Every situation you encounter is new and different. And for you to respond the same way now as you did before, as if there are no differences at all, is simply a mechanical response, a patterned one, not a creative one, not an adaptive one. And when you do the same old thing, you're most likely going to get the same old response, the same old result. And you can feel as if you're right and it should work. yet still generate an undesirable result. And you may feel justified doing it the same old way. But if your method doesn't get the result that you want, then just how effective are you really? The ability to adapt to changing circumstances is critical to survival. It certainly dictates the quality of your life in some ways. As you've no doubt noticed, times are changing. People used to work at a job and then go home to their families. Now so many people live alone and work into the evening. People used to socialize. Now they watch TV or they log onto the internet. People used to meet socially and date. Now they place ads in newspapers looking for partners. Times have changed. And there are those who don't like what is happening. So they try and keep things the way that they used to be. But certainly by now you've learned you can't live in the past. Things change. Kids grow up. Economies change. Technology increases. Societies change. Cultural values change. And it's your ability to adapt, to read situations clearly, and to be able to reach inside yourself and find the parts of you that are most relevant, that will let you handle the situation skillfully. It's that ability to adapt that I'm wanting you to perfect. It means knowing yourself, knowing your range of capabilities, learning to develop new skills, growing, always growing, adapting, changing with changing times. And there's a certain delight in discovering within yourself the ability to change with changing times. And so when it's time to do something different, you can be observant about what works. You can be informed about what's sensible. But most of all, you can demand of yourself that you extend yourself by experimenting with new behaviors, doing things, not just thinking things, not just feeling things, but actively doing things. Doing things that can bring about a different and more satisfying result. And when you're not sure what to do, you can save yourself a lot of despair and frustration by going outside of yourself to find out from others what's feasible, what's effective. So much of what I learn from people who do things well. Now, during this period of time that you have been sitting there and listening, you can sense a powerful, positive motivation building. And when you realize it isn't you, but it is something about your strategy that needs modifying, it's really very, very encouraging to realize at a deep level that if you change what you do, you can and will get a different result, a much better result. And so you can gradually stop despairing, and you can start learning. You can stop feeling like a victim and start feeling strong as you realize you have new choices now to step outside what has been in the past, to do something different. And it's those great feelings of motivation, and it's your willingness to learn and keep learning that I'd encourage you to bring back with you in just a moment when I ask you to reorient yourself. But first, take whatever time you need to process, absorb all that I've talked about at a very deep level within you. And let the words do something different. Let them keep surfacing in your awareness to remind you of the possibilities in each and every situation where you care about what actually happens. And so when you're ready to, you can bring this hypnotic experience to a comfortable close and start the process of slowly reorienting yourself at a rate that's easy and gradual. And in a little while, when you're ready, you can begin to move around to re-energize yourself and re-alert yourself. Open your eyes, fully reoriented.